Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, December 12th, 2016.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Russ, it was a busy weekend in the NHL, a lot of interesting games. We'll talk about that for the next 45 minutes to an hour. But I wanted to start on this simply because it's here in Buffalo, and it's not specifically hockey, but it's sort of relatable to what hockey franchises and what any sports franchise goes through. If you wanted a bit of symbolism yesterday, watch what happened at the end of the first half in Buffalo when they played the Pittsburgh Steelers. There was snow on the field, and the team decided to clear off the field. You know, the NFL wants a clear green field.
Right.
The Bills have that. I think they're the only team in the NFL, except for maybe Detroit, the indoor teams that have that long turf.
Yeah.
With the rubber pellets spread out through it to sort of cushion. Well, they bring out this big brush type machine to clear off the snow, and what they don't realize is that it's picking up all the rubber pellets. So when they get to the end of the field, there is this massive big black pile of rubber pellets, and it looked like a bunch of cow manure, which is the way the Buffalo Bills organization has played and has been managed in recent years. And now, and it came out before the game, and you were the first one to mention to me, and then I heard like Jason Lock-on-4 and other people, Tim Graham from the Buffalo News, mention that Rex Ryan might be fired as soon as today. Now that talk is sort of dissipated, but they're out of the playoffs. They're going to miss the playoffs. More than likely, Rex Ryan is done in Buffalo. But Tim Graham of the Buffalo News, who used to work for ESPN, wrote a really good article and basically said it shouldn't stop at Rex Ryan. It should be Rex Ryan. It should be Doug Whaley, the general manager. It should be the scouting staff. It should be, scorched earth, blow this thing up, start from the very beginning. And going towards other teams in other professional sports, and I'll take, we'll go to the NHL. Sometimes I think it's better just to completely blow it up and clear out everything rather than bring coaches in like little piecemeal changes. And most of the time, those piecemeal changes don't change the direction of anything.
Well, remember, in the NFL, it's a little different in the sense that there's so much money riding on it that nobody rebuilds. Nobody. Because what happens in the NFL is if you rebuild, you're just a bottom dweller. Look at Jacksonville. How many years are they rebuilding? Like, it just doesn't – there's too many players. So you have to literally do everything piecemeal in the NFL. I think the NHL is different because it's less players on the field at one time. You can really impact your team with drafting well. You don't have to pick up as many free agents. And your one coach in the NHL has more impact than just the head coach in the NFL because, like, the head coach, he's the last decider of everything. But then you've got your offense coordinator, your defensive coordinator, your special team. Like, there's so many coaches. There are a couple of other assistants in the NHL, but let's face it, the head coach is the real boss there, and it's pretty easy to change that. So I think it's easier in the NHL, but we still don't see as many teams blowing it up because of ticket prices. I mean, that's the real reason.
Yeah, but in the long run, I think the teams, when you have everybody on the same page, there's a greater chance of a team being more successful than sort of having management and coaches at cross purposes. Now, you have experience with Rex Ryan from the Jets. Yeah. I mean, Rex Ryan was not hired by Doug Whaley. He was hired by the ownership.
Right.
And he was given a window. And if you look you look at like the draft that the Bills had, they drafted a defensive lineman that maybe they needed, but they drafted it out of Clemson, which is just happened to be where Rex Ryan's son played football.
Yeah.
So it was, it seemed like
that's what happens with when you hire a Rex Ryan, even if you have the strongest GM in football, when he's yelling in your ear, it's hard to ignore him. And so you have to do some things to appease him. And the Jets did it too. And the Jets drafted with a first-round pick, Quentin Coples. Horrible pick. Like, he had all the tools. He was tall. He was fast. He looked like he could block passes. He looked like he could tackle guys. But he could only do it a couple times a game. Like, that was it. He couldn't sustain. And so Rex Ryan's not a good talent evaluator. And now it's turning out he's not a great head coach either, which is what I always thought. He's a good coordinator, and that's the difference with him.
And the general manager they've had even before Ryan was there has, he's made some pretty bad moves, like trading 2 first-round picks for Sammy Watkins and drafting Emmanuel and all these things. And the thing is,
how friendly. See, this is what it comes down to in all of these leagues. How friendly or cozy is the GM with ownership? If he's pretty friendly, you could write about it on ESPN till you're blue in the face. They're not going to fire the GM. They're just going to fire the coach and the coaching staff.
Well, this is where the bridge is from the NFL to pro hockey here. If you remember, Terry Pegula took over mid-season with the Sabres with Darcy Regier and Lindy Ruff as head coach, and I believe it was 2 years before there was any decision made on them. There was an infusion of money. They went out and they traded for Brad Boyes. They brought in a couple other players. They spent big money in free agency on Ville Leno and Christian Ehrhoff. Basically the ownership gave that management and coaching squad the ammo to shoot themselves.
Yeah.
And they ended up doing that. Now I think they're doing the same thing with the Bills, and I think it's going to be a clean sweep. But I mean, I look at the Maple Leaf situation, and I always bring it back to the Leafs because I cover them. You had 20 years of fire the coach, fire the GM, not at the same time. It's not the GM's coach. Then you had ownership meddling with John Ferguson. Then they traded all this stuff. Brian Burke brought in, even though Ron Wilson and him were friends, he didn't hire Ron Wilson. So eventually he fires Ron Wilson. He brings in his own coach. Then Burke gets fired. Then it's like all this thing is like everything until finally they chopped the head. They got rid of everyone. They got rid of the scouting staff. And they bring in Babcock along with Dubas and Hunter. The only weird thing is they bring in the GM after the fact. So maybe there's a little bit of that going on. But pretty much everybody's on the same page. And the organization, there was one person, Brendan Shanahan, who decided, we're going to do this. And if you're not on board with this, then you're not going to get hired. That's preferable to everybody coming in with a different agenda and a different plan of what's going to happen.
So far, it looks like it could be preferable. We don't know yet. That's the funny thing. Right now, they're at the bottom of the division. We don't know. In 3 years, what if they do turn into the Edmonton Oilers and are still at the bottom? Anything's possible. We like I said, we talked about rebuilding even a week ago. There is no real good formula for it anymore.
Right. Now let's get to some of the action, and we have to start with the Metropolitan division because that division is insane right now. You have 5 teams. First of all, both wildcard teams at this point are coming out of the Metropolitan division. They have better records than the third place team in the Atlantic. Right now, you have the Rangers with 41, Pittsburgh with 39, Philadelphia with 39, Columbus with 38, Washington with 37. All of these teams have won at least 3 games in a row. Philadelphia has won 9 in a row. So everybody is hot in the division.
Well, and they've won 9 in a row, and they're still not in first place. That's the amazing thing.
Right. Now, talk about Philadelphia first because they win 2 games on the weekend. And I was watching that Dallas-Philadelphia game, and Dallas was leading 2-1 late in the third period. Let's see. Uh-oh.
They're coming for me. Make this quick.
Okay. Dallas was leading 2-1 late in the third period. I had an engagement to go to, and it was maybe 6-7 minutes left to go in the third period. And then I checked the score on my phone after the game, and it was 4-2 Philadelphia. And you were at the game. I'm like, what the hell happened? Because Dallas seemed to be in control in that game, and then all of a sudden, three goals in the last 5.5 minutes of regulation.
Yeah, Dallas has big issues, and they had big issues again in their latest loss. Philly just, what they did? They just sort of turned it up a little bit, and they put more pressure on Dallas's defense. Dallas's defense eventually folded. And that's something that you could do now with some of these teams that don't have deep defensive cores. You could sort of really, there are teams like, let's just say, that Detroit game. They were playing Philly tight the entire game. Then all of a sudden in 3-on-3, you got a guy like Jake Voracek on the ice, and all of a sudden things open up a little. Braden Shen makes a shot, and it's over. that was longer than I thought Detroit might hang with them at that point. I thought Detroit could win that game, but they would have had to have jumped out to an early lead. And that's the thing. A lot of these teams have to have leads. If they don't, it's very hard for these defenses to just sort of maintain a a tie or a 1 goal from behind kind of thing. It's hard now in this league.
Now, Braden Shen gets a hat trick on Saturday, gets the game-winning goal in overtime on Sunday. Anthony Stolarz, who we've talked about on the show a number of times about, Dave Haxtell being a little afraid of putting him in the lineup. He gets a shutout against Detroit, and we know Detroit's not a juggernaut team, but a shutout's a shutout.
It's a good performance, and maybe that does get him another start. Now, maybe that does give the coach reason to play him a little bit more, because he really should. You don't want to ride Steve Mason this hard this soon, because you don't know what's going to happen in April. Like, that's where you sort of have to gear up for. But right now, Flyers are in a good spot. The offense is clicking. Voracek is, I think, 3rd leading scorer in the league, something like that. He had 8 points in his last 2 games before yesterday. Like, there's a lot of things that are clicking right for that team.
Now, is there like an attitude adjustment going on with Gostisbehere? Because I heard the guys on Hockey Central say that he was. I'm not sure if he was a healthy scratch or if he was ill, but he's been scratched before this during this streak.
No, he had an injury. He had an injury a game ago, and so that was it. I don't think there's an attitude adjustment. I think there's a play adjustment. I think he has had to figure out, really from when we talked about it maybe a few weeks ago, how to clamp down more on defense. And I think clamping down more on defense has slowed down his offense just a bit. He's getting a lot of shots on net, but now he's got to be more responsible, so he can't sort of pinch in as much as he used to.
And now we have a budding goaltending controversy at Madison Square Garden, as Antti Raanta, with 2 shutouts on the weekend, one a 1-0 overtime shutout win with Nick Holden scoring the goal in OT, and then a 5-0 shutout of the New Jersey Devils. I mean, Russ, we talked about this before the show. I don't care if Antti Raanta has 100 shutouts in a row. Henrik Lundqvist is the goaltender.
Yeah, you have to go back to Lundqvist the next game. I would have gone back to him the game that he just got the shutout against the Devils. If you're looking for him to work out the kinks, and I've seen Lundqvist with these hard practices because I've seen him come back from injury, and I've seen him work with Benoit Allaire on his own, and it's harder than what you would expect a practice to be, but it's still not game conditions. And we're only talking about like this little part of Lundqvist's game that isn't perfect. I mean, again, the team's not losing a lot of games, or any really, because of Henrik Lundqvist. Maybe you could pin a couple on him. Yeah. I think this is micromanaging, but Lundqvist is talking about it, so there's definitely something to it. We do see where he talks about a little bit of a lack of focus, where he'll give up a goal here or there that you think that he should have stopped. But at the end of the day, it shouldn't be enough to keep him on the bench. This has been only the 3rd time in his career that he has sat for 3 games. That's, basically by being healthy. And that goes back to when he supplanted Kevin Weeks. So if you think about this, it's much to do about nothing unless he plays again. I don't care if he had the 2 shutouts. You cannot play Raanta the next game. I think that's when it starts to turn and become a story, because we started to talk about it a couple of games ago. Now we're talking about it again. And if he gets the next start against Chicago, I don't care if he beats Chicago. Right now for the Rangers, the biggest battle is not the regular season. The biggest battle is to get Lundqvist sorted out with the team so that you can make a deep run. That's the biggest battle. The biggest battle is not to see how many wins you can get out of Antti Raanta, because at the end of the day, he's always been pretty successful as the backup anyhow. It's not like you're ever going to have him be the number 1. He's not a number 1 in this league.
See, the thing is, I think the worst case scenario is you put Lundqvist back in, and he gets hammered, and he plays badly. Then all of a sudden you have.
But even if he does, you know what? You're in first place. Suck it up.
Yeah, I mean, is their next game against Chicago?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe this would contribute more to a. I don't think it's a controversy right now. I think it's just fodder for the media. But right now, I would Raanta has had 2 shutouts in a row. I would play Raanta against Chicago, and then make it clear, no matter what, even if he gets another shutout, that Lundqvist is going in. I mean, Lundqvist has been out for 3 games in a row, and you put him in against a team like Chicago. even though they don't.
You have to put him in at some point. Right. Now you're going to pick and choose what team you're going to put Lundqvist in against. I'm not worried about that.
But you know what I'm saying? In terms of maybe in terms of being fair, or in terms of
he's itching to get back in. He's not going to say it, but he's itching to get back in. You've got to just put him in. Antti Raanta gets rewarded enough with his salary and with a good fan base, with a great team and a great rink. He doesn't need to get another start to see if he can go one shutout ahead of Mike Dunham, to be the last guy to have 2 shutouts in a row for the Rangers. You know what I mean? To me, it's all meaningless. It's really because, again, you are possibly pressing the wrong button by using him, because what if the team does start to get chemistry with Raanta and then they don't have the same chemistry with Lundqvist? I don't think that is happening yet, but what if that were to happen? Do you really want to ride into the playoffs with Antti Raanta as your goalie down the line? No.
Now, Columbus has won 6 in a row. They won another 2 games on the weekend. They beat Detroit and the New York Islanders. Russ, looking at this team, it's to me the most impressive thing, and we talked about they don't really have a number 1 center after they traded Brian Johansson. They didn't rush Pierre-Luc Dubois. They're basically playing with I think of offense by committee type of thing. They're getting more production out of Nick Foligno, some of the guys who didn't play well last year. They pick up Sam Gagner, who's got 11 goals, who, by the way, Gagner and Antti Raanta and Voracek were the 3 stars of the week. Voracek was the number 1 star. But the thing that strikes me here is it's
the players wake up in the morning and they look at their emails to see if they're one of those 3 stars. I just want to let you know that.
I know that it keeps them up on Sunday night wondering in anticipation whether they've made the 3 stars of the week. Yeah. But the thing is, it's like the thing that's impressed me most about Columbus is right now they only have 5 losses. Right now Bobrovsky's playing great, but they're getting offense. It's throughout. It's not one line. It's by committee, and their power play has been extremely effective. And we know that how much Werenski has had an effect on that team, but it's not just him.
No. But there was always plenty of talent there, and there are other players there. There's good skill players. You got your Wembergs. You got your Dubinskis and your Hartnells, your grinders that get you points, that have veteran leadership. You have all that. But again, it's all going to fall back on the health of Sergei Bobrovsky. I do like Korpisalo a lot, but I don't know if he's ready to sort of take the reins if Bobrovsky were out for a long stretch and continue what they're doing. That would be a huge test for a young goalie. We'll hope that never happens. But right now, I mean, Bobrovsky being healthy, the addition of Werenski, and everything else has sort of corrected itself. John Tortorella is not getting in the way of his team. He's not causing any controversy, and things are working out for him.
Yeah, I mean, right now McElhinney's the backup, and I think you're right though. If Bobrovsky got hurt like he has the last few years,
you're not running with McElhinney for the rest of the season scenario.
I think Korpisalo proved last year when he was in there for a long stretch that he's a capable goaltender. He's a little young, but he's capable of handling that job in the interim if Bobrovsky does get hurt. But yeah, I mean, they're a fairly deep team, but there's not a 1-star player up front, and I guess that's to their benefit if everybody's operating on 8 cylinders. They're just getting offense from a number of different places. So in the Metro, like I said, right now, I mean, Pittsburgh at 39 points. Sidney Crosby leading the league in goals. I mean, the funny thing was, obviously Crosby's one of the best players in the league. He's never been the sniper. He's been the playmaker.
Right. But that's been his own doing.
Yes.
Same as Wayne Gretzky just being a selfless player. Same as even Claude Giroux when I talked about, hey, he needs to be a more selfish player. Well, I don't think it's any revelation that since he's been more selfish, Giroux, the team has gone on a hot streak. Sometimes these guys in this era need to be more selfish. It's different than the old days.
Now, moving on to the Atlantic. I mean,
one more thing about the Metro. So the Devils, in that 5-0 loss, that was a team trying to hold back the Rangers. We're going to hold you back. We're going to hold you back. Corey Schneider's holding them back for a little while, and then the dam broke. And that's a team where if the Devils fall behind a few goals, they can't come back. But that game, they showed very little, very, very little. And now I'm a little worried. Now I think the Devils are starting to slip.
Yeah, the funny thing is, and I've seen them play a couple times, is the offense is better than it has been with Hall, with Camilleri, Zajac. I mean, I know he got hurt about a week ago.
Yeah, and Zaka's been out for 4 games. He comes back soon too.
Right, but there is more offensive talent there than there has been in the past. It's on defense. I looked at their offensive production out of their blue line. Severson's, I think, got 15 points. After that, there's not a lot of offense on the back end. And I think, we all know that there was highway robbery, that Taylor Hall for Adam Larson deal. But Larson did play 25 minutes a night for them. And I think that team right now is still struggling with the depth on the blue line in terms of, I think they need an offensive guy in the blue line. I think they need somebody who can eat more minutes. And if they could get a couple more blue liners, like you could say that about 10 teams, they would be more competitive. But right now, the way the division is going, I mean, Carolina, the Islanders, and even New Jersey, there's a 7-point to 10-point gap between those 3 teams and the other teams in the division. Not to say they may as well cash it in, but when you're getting close to Christmas and you're that far behind, it's tough to catch up.
I mean, they spent money on Ben Lovejoy, but he's not an offensive defenseman.
No,
Andy Green's the captain, right? But he's not an offensive defenseman. Yeah. They definitely need another one. That's why we've talked about Shattenkirk. That would be the best place for Shattenkirk to go because they are in the most need of that. And then actually you could make Severson, your second most important guy in the power play, and that would help that team immensely.
Now, the Montreal Canadiens, I mean, the news came out late last week that they lost Alex Galchenyuk and David Desharnais for up to 2 months with injuries. They've called a few people up from St. John.
Desharnais was on his first hit of the season. That was the weird thing. He actually laid a hit, and that's how he got hurt. I think his knee went into the boards or something, and it's like, wow, that's just bad luck, man.
Yeah, no, yeah, it happens when you're not used to doing something. But they're relatively comfortable in first place in the Atlantic Division with 41 points. And, you would think losing Galchenyuk, losing Desharnais, that they would be challenged offensively, which they've been challenged offensively for the last few years. But they opened up a can of whoop ass on the Colorado Avalanche on Saturday, killing them 10-1. And you don't see it happen often, Russ, when you have a starting goaltender, he gets pulled, the backup that night comes in, and then he gets pulled.
I've seen it. I've covered a few games like that, and it's just. But that's where that's where it's good when you have goalies that support each other, because if you're a cutthroat system, I'm ahead of you. If I'm the number one, well, clearly if there were a team, I'd be the number one goalie, you'd be the number 2. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. And so if I were the number 1 goalie and you were the number 2 and you didn't like me, then you'd be happy that you're coming in the game for me, but then you would want out, so that's why these guys do support each other.
I'd be dulling your skates so you trip on in the blue paint.
Yeah, listen, I was the better street guard. You were probably the better street goalie.
I played without a mask. I was that confident in my glove hand. But anyway, the second place team in the Atlantic is the Ottawa Senators, which surprises me simply because they're not scoring goals. And this was a team that scored like crazy last year, but they couldn't keep the puck out of the net. I mean, we've talked about Guy Boucher having a positive effect on them playing a more defensive game. But if you look at their offense right now, other than Turris, Stone, and Hoffman, and obviously Erik Karlsson, there's not a lot there in terms of offensive production.
And they're not giving up many either.
Yeah, I mean, I know, but hey, you're not going to complain if they're winning. And right now,
just wait to see what happens when they play Nashville. I want to see if Guy Boucher is going to sort of wait back and see if he can get under Laviolette's skin early like he did a few years back.
Well, yeah, please. Yeah, that would be pretty funny. Now, the Boston Bruins are in third place right now, and for those teams in the Atlantic that had hopes of making a wild card, put that out of your mind right now. And the only hope that you have right now is to catch either Ottawa or Boston.
Yeah.
Boston lost to Colorado on Thursday. Then come back against Toronto on Saturday, a team that has struggled for eons in Boston. They had won one of the last 13 games in Boston. The Bruins put 11 shots on Frederik Andersen in the first period on Saturday night. They can't beat him. And then the Leafs score a couple times in the second and 2 in the third and win 4-1. The thing that I thought Tuukka Rask played pretty well, but the thing that I caught from that game, we know that Toronto has got a lot of foot speed. They're a very good skating team. When they play against other teams who are decent, have decent speed, it looks good. When they play against a team that doesn't have a lot of speed at all, they look lightning fast. And that was the impression that I got on Saturday. Boston looked like they were skating with concrete skates.
Yeah. Now here's the thing. I mean, if Boston can somehow survive the regular season, their style of play may lend themselves to doing better in the playoffs when teams are not as fast and are a little more hesitant in the offensive zone, but they have to get there.
Yeah.
And to get there, they are a slow team. They're going to have to add some speed. They just, again, we talked about it when they added Backes, that slowed them down. When you have Pasternak out there, who's playing with him that can keep up with him, and that's a lot of times I'm watching Pasternak and he's sometimes making plays ahead of the other guys. And even though he's playing on a top 6 role.
Well, that was the surprising thing. I was surprised that Claude Julien was putting all of his eggs in one basket because against Toronto, he had Pasternak with Bergeron and Marchand.
And that's fine. When he does that, then they click. But then the third and fourth lines are really hurting.
Right, and if you stop that line, there's nothing there. And other than a miscue behind the net late in the second period, Anderson and the Leafs, shut down the Bruins. So
Bruins fans will probably hate me, but they're missing guys like who were successful Bruins that I felt like were really good, like Chris Kelly, guys like that. They used to thrive in that Claude Julien system. They don't have those guys right now. Yeah. Maybe they're trying to turn Ryan Spooner into that. I don't know. I think he has too much speed to turn him into that, but that's where I think they're really hurting in their third and fourth lines. I think that's what's really
there was some hope last year with guys like Spooner who were being really effective on the power play, and their power play was great. This year, we've heard the trade rumors about Spooner, and we're seeing guys like Dalton Heinen and Arcieri, and they're trying to bring up kids within the organization.
They're plugging in. They have a lot of college kids, and they're plugging them in, and they're hoping one of them sticks like Vetrano. That's what they're really trying to do, and they got lucky on defense with Carlo sticking, and that was, I don't think that was as much luck as it is talent for Carlo. I always thought he had it, but it still was lucky he was able to take the role he's taken because otherwise they'd be in worse straits. But offensively, it's harder for them to find those other guys to fit in. They're not as deep offensively in their system. A lot of the guys that they do have are too far down below to really help them. And so the guys, at the Providence level, not enough to help them there.
A little bit surprising that Tampa – you would think – last year the Tampa Bay lost Stamkos late in the season, and they were able to get to Game 7 of the conference final without him.
Right.
You would have thought that they would be able to, even though it's the regular season, but you would have thought that since they were able to succeed without him during the playoffs, that they would be able to succeed without him during the regular season, and that hasn't been the case. Tampa has really underachieved. They've lost 3 games in a row. They lost to Pittsburgh over the weekend. It's a little surprising. Right now they're on the outside looking in. I think that they're very capable of catching Ottawa or catching Boston, being one of the 3 teams in the Atlantic, and I think that they will. But I'm a little surprised that that they really haven't kicked it into gear and recovered, I guess, or been able to survive better without Stamkos in the lineup.
Well, Drouin has not done what we'd hope he'd do. He's got 13 points. It's not bad. He's a -2, but 13 points in 21 games. I expect a little more out of Drouin, but he is still a young player. So, some of the other veterans, Kucherov is not having the same kind of year he did last year. And, you were willing to give the back up the Brinks truck for him.
He got into a fight on the weekend. That's how out of character he's playing right now. But
so is it the coach? I don't know. Is it the goaltending? Is that not as good? I think that's a part of it. Here's the tough reality that's going to have to happen this year. And I don't know who's played more games. I should look at it. But they're going to have to, some point this season, they may have to switch to Vasilevsky and just have Bishop be the backup. I really do think with the speed of the game now, that's how it's going. I don't know that it's going to go that way, but I think there's a chance it could go that way.
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, I don't see the great impetus there for them to trade Bishop unless they're that anxious to establish a number one, because with Stamkos being on long-term injury, they don't have any kind of cap crunch, so they can actually. And this is the thing: if they keep waddling like this, you could see Steve Yzerman make his move earlier than just before the deadline, because they have the flexibility to go out there and trade for a big money player because Stamkos is on LTIR now. They can't.
Here's the thing. So Bishop has 1 win in his last 5 games. 2 of those games, he gave up 4 goals. In 3 of them, he only gave up 1.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is that still good play? I mean, it's pretty good.
Well, the thing is, I'm not really that impressed with. I mean, they have good defensemen. We know that Hedman's one of the best blue liners in the league. Strawman's effective with them, but they're not very deep. And when you have to give significant minutes to guys like Andre Schuster, I mean, I think that speaks to your defense being
okay. But here's the thing, and the stats are going to back me up. So Bishop's played something like, I don't know, 19 games. Vasilevsky's played 12. So I guess, they've relieved each other at certain times. Bishop has a .906 save percentage. Vasilevsky has a .925. The record with Vasilevsky in there is 11, 6, and 3. The record in there with Bishop is 8, 10, and 1.
Wow.
You've got to make the change. John Cooper is probably being stubborn about this because, Bishop has taken him a long way, but Bishop's play is slipping.
John Cooper is very loyal, and we've said that sometimes that's to detriment. I mean, with some of the players that he's played over other players.
But the play is slipping of Ben Bishop, and I think they really do need to make the change.
Well, one thing about the Maple Leafs, then we'll move on to the other divisions. The Leafs split on the weekend. They beat Boston in Boston. After, like I said, Boston dominated the first period. They came back and played well in the other 2 periods. It was like the exact opposite in Toronto. On Sunday against Colorado, after Colorado had gotten hammered on Saturday, Varlamov was unconscious.
Yeah.
I think it was the shots were 21-8. It was like 19 or 21 shots. I'm trying to do this by memory, but the Leafs did not score, did not beat them, and Mikko Rantanen scored late in the first to give them the lead, and then McKinnon scored a goal on the power play in the third period. I mean, this is the thing. This is the inconsistencies of having a young team. You're going to probably win some games that you deserve to lose, and lose some games you probably deserve to win. And I think that's the reality. And right now the Leafs are near the bottom of the conference, and I think that's going to remain. The one thing that I noticed yesterday, Russ, for the first time, it was William Nylander being singled out all year, most of the time for criticism.
Yeah.
And then yesterday, Mitch Marner is played on the 4th line. And when asked after the game why Marner played on the 4th line, Mike Babcock said, "I've been watching the games," meaning that Marner has not been playing up to his what he had played with or played against or played during the year, and he hasn't scored in 10 games. So this to me is Babcock pushing these young guys and pressing buttons, and I don't know if it's good or not.
Yeah, I don't think it's good. I think if you want to put him on the 4th line for a couple shifts just to sort of get the demotion in his mind and then put him back where he should go, I'm fine with that. The problem is the less Mitch Marner plays, which on the 4th line he's going to play less, the less chance he has of breaking out of this streak. Because
and that's what Babcock did. He played him like 4 or 5 shifts on the 4th line and then moved him up. But to me, like I said, it's like it's pressing buttons. It's like, okay, and that it's not scathing criticism. It's not like Ron Wilson calling.
No. But you know what the thing is? The game has changed a little, and I think Babcock needs to change a little too. You're talking about Marner, who's just an amazingly skilled guy who's just going through a rough patch, right? He's a young kid. This is his first season. He's not going to develop if you keep trying to press these buttons. And the problem is he can't play great defense. So even just putting him on any shifts on the fourth line is not doing him a favor. You're not playing to his strengths. You're not playing to your team's strengths. And so that's why the media was confused, and that's why I don't like it. The Nylander stuff is only his first pro season, too. I mean, he played part of a season last year, but he hasn't played even 82 pro games yet. Right. Until he's done that, I think you got to ease up on these guys. You can't treat them all like 10-year vets. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and the Sportsnet broadcast accurately, illustrated. They showed some highlights of, Marner is being covered much differently now than he was at the beginning of the season because he was an unknown commodity. I mean, they know he's a talented player, but he was a rookie. And now, after 20 games, maybe the scouting reports of other teams have adjusted. They know they can't give him space. They know that they have to, be more physical with him because he's a smaller player, and he's going to have to overcome that. And that's part of the learning process. I get that, and that's universal throughout. Yeah. But in Toronto, I think that everything is noticed. And when you move somebody to the fourth line and then you criticize them a little bit in the post game, and then you move somebody else, it just seems, like I said, button pushing. And then
look, I think my buddy Gord Stellick proved a good point on the midday show today by saying how Nylander got over that amazing one-day injury because clearly he was just being benched. I was
there. At the morning school, he looked fine. Yeah. So, I have no proof of this, but I think it was very possible he was benched for non-health reasons.
Yeah.
Wake up. Maybe the health reason was he needed some smelling salts. He needed a wake-up call.
Yeah. And so again, I just think you have to be careful. It's hard to treat these guys like hardened veterans. They're not there yet. They don't have the miles on them.
Now, going to the Central Division, just to touch on that, the Blackhawks, they lose to the Rangers, but they get a point. Then they come back and beat Dallas on Sunday. So 3 of a possible 4 points. Scott Darling is their goaltender right now because Corey Crawford's out with recovering from an appendectomy. Jonathan Taves is still out of the lineup. And if you look at it right now, Hossa, Panarin, these are the guys that are stepping up. They're winning even without their best goaltender and their best center.
Well, I think Darling's turned into one of the better backups in the league. I think their defense helps a lot. I think he's in that Cam Talbot situation where Talbot was with the Rangers where it all meshes very well. I mean, I saw the Darling start in Philly where, that's where Crawford had to get his appendectomy, and he wasn't really phased. He was told when he woke up that day that he was going to be the starter, and, they got the backup from Temple. They called the guy, and the coach came down. He actually was at the game yesterday. They invited him as a guest to the game as a member of the team, and that was nice. So the Blackhawks are always first class when it comes to stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's that big of a drop-off. We know how good Corey Crawford is, but Darling knows how to play in this system. So I'm not shocked that they can adapt like this. Now, could they adapt like 30 games if they had to like that? No, I don't think so. But for short time, yeah.
I saw Minnesota last week play the Leafs. Looked pretty impressive defensively, but in the third period, it was all Devin Dubnyk. And, it was 7.
Just acquired him on my fantasy team.
17 third-period shots, and Dubnyk stoned the Leafs, and now on the weekend.
He's one of the top 5 goalies in hockey now. He probably doesn't get credit for it.
He had the best save percentage in the league during the – I don't know if he still does. I think Carey Price may have overtaken him. But the Wild win 3-1 over the Blues. Now, the reason I bring this up is, Dubnyk, again, was key to the victory, and he seems to, he just seems to – it's not a fluke. It seems to – he's there.
The story of Dubnyk is just that he was a top draft pick, right? A first rounder. He maybe didn't get the greatest coaching where he was, went to the next place, maybe lost a little confidence, went to the next place, finally got to the place where, they worked with him and everything clicked. And it all clicked with him about the age of 25, right? And that's what happens sometimes with some goalies. It's not every goalie clicks at, the age of 18, 19, 20, 21. A lot of them are after that. And so I think it's clicked for him. I think the fact that his size is there has been an advantage for him. The fact that they have a very good defensive team has been great for him. I think it's all worked out.
But the thing is, the Blues, their road record is horrendous. And this is one of the reasons why
we talked about that. Yeah.
It's why I still am a little bit shy about buying into the Blues. I know their home record is great, but they just cannot seem to put it together.
Yeah, I'm not buying in for the Blues at all yet. No.
Yeah. One other thing, I mean, it got a lot of attention in the Edmonton-Winnipeg game. Patrick Laine has been scoring like crazy, and last night he scored on his own net. Now, I mean, okay, he's a rookie, and it was a mistake, and it's not that big of a thing, but I think a lot of people were making a bigger thing out of it. Could this affect him? No. I mean, right now he's having a wonderful season, but it was funny because there was a lot of talk at the end of last week stemming from a column from TSN's Gary Lawless about comparing Laine and Matthews and saying that Laine is going to, in the end, be the better player, unless Gary Lawless has, the Karnak-like powers of prognostication. I don't know how he knows that. I mean, if you look at what Laine has done, he's been streaky, and when he's hot, he scores goals in big bloody bunches. And Matthews had that 13-game goalless streak, and then now he's scored in 7 of his last 8. So, both of these guys are playing. They're 19 years old.
They're both elite. They're both elite players, but it's the ups and downs of a rookie season. But here's the thing: this is where you have to be careful for Laine, because he's been getting so much ice time, and he's played. That team has played more games than anybody in the NHL. I think he has hit a mental wall, and you have to be careful about that. That was a clear brain cramp, and you have to get him over that. I think Blake Wheeler did a nice job with him, hugging him on the bench and trying to let him know, hey, we've all been there. But this is you got to remember, this is a 19-year-old playing top minutes in the NHL against great players, first line, a lot of games, 30-something games, right? Like 31, 32 games. And, sometimes you have to take the foot off the gas a little bit and maybe ease up on his minutes a little bit. And I know they've done that at some points in games when he wasn't fully engaged. And so that's the part you have to manage. It's not just – you can't just let these guys go and, expect everything to be all right in a rookie season. It's going to happen.
Yeah, and it's funny because of the, quote, big three in Toronto, the one that has not had any criticism, hurled on him has been Matthews. Marner has just come into it. Nylander's had it. Matthews is a sort of a different type of cat because he's playing up the middle. He's even though he's 19, he's very mature and he's very defensively responsible.
Played the men's league last year. That helped.
Yeah, and now that scoring drought has passed him. I just think not to say that later in the year Mike Babcock may take the opportunity just to give him a reality check, but right now he hasn't really needed it because he's I saw him last night. He's standing in front of the net. He's being physical. He's playing that two-way game. He's
well, that's the thing. When a guy plays that strong of a two-way game, you're not going to have as many problems with him. Laine doesn't have that kind of two-way game. So that's the difference. Matthews has always had to play that two-way game. He's always had to be the top-line center. He's always had to go up against elite competition. So this is something where maybe because he is a center, he's a little more attuned to it. It's possible.
Now, I know that you wrote an article for Sportsology about 3-on-3 OT.
Yep. Yeah, I basically wrote about it because after the Flyers beating the Panthers a couple days ago, 4 or 5 days ago in OT, I spoke to Aaron Ekblad about it, and that's when we talked about him saying that the point wasn't good enough and there was a lot of pressure on that team. But the other part that came out in that conversation was about the 3-on-3. When it first came out, we loved it. We loved the fact that it was helter-skelter. We loved the fact that preseason Hitchcock said it was going to be chaos. We loved all of that. And it wasn't never chaos, but it was very exciting. This year, I noticed with a full year and training camp and video, things have slowed down. You'll get some fast shifts, but now I'm seeing players like Claude Giroux literally take the puck out of the offensive zone, go back over the lines, and set it up again. And I'm seeing that happen in a lot of games. And it's like, okay, you're taking time off the clock. You're giving sometimes your players a chance to make a line change, but a lot of times they're not making a line change. They're just sort of slowing it down. So the coaches have now slowed it down, and Aaron Ekblad called it a chess match, and I think he got that from his coach. I don't know if Aaron Ekblad's a chess player, but I didn't ask him. But I think he got that from his coach. And I think when he was talking about, and people could read the article about his zone defensive play, that's coach speak. And I think that's now how they're attacking the 3-on-3 overtime. And, we talked about it last week, how the percentage was 26% going into overtime. I wasn't very surprised to see that the top two coaches right now for the most wins are Joel Quenneville and Darryl Sutter. So, they're two of the best coaches in the league, and I think they have it figured out. And I think now we're at a point where is 3-on-3 worth it, or was it just another gimmick? It was another gimmick laid on another gimmick. They didn't like how many shootouts there were, so they went 3-on-3 to slow down the shootouts, and now everything is slowed down. So my feeling is, why don't you just wipe it all clean and just have it be a winner-take-all point system? I'm okay with the 3-point system too, but I like the winner-take-all system better because I think, hey, why not? Go through all these things. We're not going to play indefinite overtime. You're still going to have overtime in a shootout, but you might as well just make it 5-on-5 again and winner-take-all. That'll be the difference.
Well, you knew
no tie, no loser point.
Yeah, you knew that eventually there was, the coaches were going to coach it up, that they were going to devise a way of making it less.
And we're at that point right now.
Right, and you want to know where I thought that you could noticeably see that when all of a sudden the goaltender was mixed in as a fourth defender, but these players sending shots back to pass to the goalie. Yes. Because that, the goalie can, especially if it's a goaltender who can handle the puck like a Corey Schneider.
Yeah.
To pass it back to him, have him either go behind the net or stick handle the puck while the other players are changing, and then he can throw the headman pass up or to the winger. It gives them another and you could tell that coaches are okay. We're going to use that guy because he's going to be there, and we can get away with it, and we can make a change. Because you saw sometimes when they tried to dump it in, and the turnaround was so quick that if they didn't dump it in the right way, if there was a change, and remember it's the long change.
Yes,
guys are heading to the bench, and if the dump in wasn't perfect, the defender would turn around and fire it right up the middle, and one of that team's players was hanging at the blue line, and it'd be a clear-cut breakaway.
Right.
Now, the thing that prevents that now, instead of even dumping it in, is dump it back and either have one defender skate behind the net while the other two people are changing, or pass it to the goaltender, and he'll hold on to the puck while everybody changes. So they're using the goaltender, and I mean that they're just using what's available to them.
Yeah, and they've killed the fun out of it. They've sucked the fun out of it. And that's why – and I hate the loser point. I do. Because we could now look at these stats for some of these teams that are 11, 11, and 5 and all of those things. And I always say, and it holds true, hey, you're not going to get that in the playoffs. So if you're a team that has gotten, let's say, 20, 25 points at the end of a season because of overtime and shootout wins, it's fool's gold, because in the playoffs, it doesn't translate.
And we're coming up on the NHL trade freeze, the Christmas freeze. I think Brian Burke is no longer a GM in the league. With him, it was 10 days.
Yeah.
I believe it's 4 or 5 days. I think it's I'd be like the 18th or 19th of December. And I mean, there's some names out there about potentially being moved. I know that on Hockey Night in Canada, Elliot Friedman reported that there's been some inquiry regarding Zemgus Girgensons with the Buffalo Sabres. His name has been out there because he just doesn't seem to fit with Dan Bilesma with his program in Buffalo. I think he's a good player, but from the indication that Friedman gave, he said that the Sabres are not anxious to give him away, which means you have to give us something that we can use for Girgensons. And right now, to me, the need for the Sabres is clearly on the blue line.
Oh, yeah.
With Kulikov, Bogosian, and George is all out with injury. They need help on the blue line, but I don't see anybody really giving away defensemen right now.
You're not really going to see them. I mean, I just don't think it's going to happen. No team is ready to give up on the season yet. No team is really worried or is cap-strapped at the moment. That's the only way you're seeing those kinds of trades, unless you can get somebody from somebody's AHL team that is ready to come into the NHL but can't, but is sort of blocked from his team. maybe that's the only way you can get a player. The Sabres are in a tough spot. They are. Even with Eichel coming back, even with them playing better, they're not a playoff team. I mean, let's be serious. They're not making the playoffs this year. They could win 10 in a row, and I still wouldn't believe they're a playoff team.
No, and the problem with them, and I was looking at, not only even if all their defensemen were healthy, Franzen is a UFA at the end of the year. He's been a disappointment. They brought in Kulikov. Kulikov has been hurt. Georges is hurt. Bogosian, to me, has been a major disappointment ever since they got him from Winnipeg.
I always told you I thought there was too much mileage, even though he was young.
The only guy who's been a constant there has been Ristolainen, and he's an excellent young defenseman, but he can't do it all on his own. And right now, the holes that they're plugging are Taylor Fadoon, Justin Falk, not the good Justin Falk, but not.
Right. I know what you mean.
But the other Justin Falk.
The FALK Falk.
Yeah, the FALK Falk, and bringing up Brendan Gooley, who's a prospect from the WHL. I mean, it's not disaster, but it's close to it. And yeah, I mean, right now, in terms of teams that are ready to sell, I mean, it's too early, like you said, but look at the standings. Especially, you've got maybe 4 or 5 teams right now in the Islanders, Arizona, Colorado, maybe Toronto, and then that's about it. I mean, it's that list will.
And New Jersey could be heading that way too.
Right, that list will expand a little bit as we get into January and February, but I think it's going to be like. I mean, I think this deadline will be busier than last year simply because of the expansion situation, and maybe that'll force teams to make some moves. But in terms of the rental market, it's going to be those bottom 5 or 6 teams, and if they have UFAs or guys who have a year left in their contract.
Although I noticed, and only because of the fantasy nature of things, Thomas Fleischmann's still out there. Surprised nobody signed him.
I mean, it's a question of whether he still has NHL speed anymore. Maybe he doesn't,
right.
But anyway, good show. We will be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock, hopefully with the next edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello.
Go to sportsology.com, read my article. I didn't give out the website. I forgot.
Okay. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.